most of the most important journalistic organizations in our nation were either founded or at least one time owned or owned now by very, very powerful, rich people. Families often, New York Times and the Schultzbergers. I'm from St. Louis, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Joseph Pulitzer, the Pulitzer Prize. Many of these people, particularly back at the turn of the previous century, were engaged in the yellowest journalism. They were, it was just, we often think of journalism as having always been pure, but that's not true. But there they are, these sort of venerable institutions now. What do we think about these institutions as they come under attack and are called, institutions of fake news, the Washington Post, the LA Times here, the Chandler family? And why are they different than Sheldon and what he wanted to do?
Yeah, that's something I wanted to address. I mean, there's no question that big news companies and media organizations have been owned by very wealthy people. Obviously that's true. That's true throughout history. And a lot of people say, well, what about Bezos? Here's a billionaire who owns a big media organization. And I think that's something that's happened over time. I think it's probably a problem in some ways that we have to kind of think about and address. But what fires me up and what angers me is when this stuff is done in secret. We did not know that Peter Thiel was on a 9-year grudge in order to silence Gawker. That he was silencing. He was in a non-transparent way, secretly, funding Hulk Hogan's lawsuit. This, by the way, there are laws on the books where this is actually not even legal in some states. The Jeopardy laws. So it's questionable what he did. I think what he did was legal. But it's the secrecy. Sheldon Adelson bought the Las Vegas Review-Journal in secret. He tried to buy it a couple years before. Everybody protested it, and he wasn't able to do it. So that, in all those cases, I think like most things, if it's more transparent and it's more clear, then you can make your own judgment about where the bias is.
Of course, the other choice is an even more corporate-owned media. I think today the FCC passed, or at least considering passing the rule allowing one individual organization to own a major newspaper or broadcast organization in one city. It's this whole owned and operated thing. It's a rule that's been there since 1934, and that's going to go away. So what do we think about that? Do we think that that is in some way better than individuals, rich, powerful people?
No, I don't think so. No, I think there's real problems with that too. I don't know what the solution is. I do think that there's a need for some sort of regulation there. That these are rules and laws that go back that far. There's probably a reason for it. So but we do live in a world where information is much more chaotic now. There are far more outlets, for that information. So, I think corporatization of media. Look, I think there's legitimate criticism of media that corporatized media has that is limited in the kinds of stories that it covers. And I think that that for too long, I think it's a legitimate criticism that it's covered. Journalism has gotten too cozy to power. That it too often trades softball stories for access to power and celebrity. I think that's a legitimate criticism of media. I think there's lots of things that we have to kind of be aware of and be vigilant about with media.